welcome back to another episode of Stripped by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I am your host, Steph Sia, aka Sia on camera. You can find me online. I'm a digital content creator here in the adult space. I was a former sugar baby for many, many years. I'm recently retired, a stripper as well, but now you just find me online because I enjoy my sleep. I don't enjoy putting a lot of makeup on, and that's kind of where I'm at with that. So I've been in the industry for over a decade, doing various things in the industry, and now I do this show to bring my friends on to the show, bring my peers on to speak about the industry, and to, most importantly, destigmatize adult work. So I do that by bringing different guests onto the show every single week, and we get to share their stories, we get to share their lived experiences, because I know a lot of you have lots of questions, but also mainly to humanize the work that it is that we do, as well as to educate folks who might not know a lot about the behind the scenes, what we go through, lots of challenges and trials and tribulations that we as sex workers go through. So that's kind of the main premise of the show. I've been doing the show since 2019. This is the last season, everyone. I know I haven't been super forthcoming about reasons why I'm stopping the show, but lots of life changes are happening. So I'm trying to take my time back as I prepare to hopefully prepare my body to maybe have a baby. That's kind of like the main thing. And also just wanting to move over onto other things. It's been like 7 years I've been doing the show, and I usually get like a 5 to 7 year itch when I'm doing things for too long. I've had many careers. Maybe I'll do a bonus episode on one of those days, but who knows? But I think this might be it for the show for now. But of course, if you're in Vancouver, if you're in Canada, you know that I do a lot of advocacy work here, grassroots movements, with a couple boards that I sit on here in doing advocacy work for sex workers here in British Columbia. So I will be continuing with that. So don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. And I'll do my best to try to keep posting on social media. It's like, you guys know it's the worst. For now, if you do want to hear those bonus episodes, I will have some available on Patreon, patreon.com/strippedbyCM. There you can find other bonus episodes, me guest lecturing at universities, other panels that I've done with other organizations, sneak peeks on like who I'm bringing onto the show for the remainder of the season. It might be a shorter season. I'm just going to see how long it's going to be serving me for, but I'm actually really focusing on wrapping it at the end of this year specifically for 2025. So keeping that in mind, I'm just trying to source out some people for some very specific topics. As you guys know, I'm really picky. So that's kind of what's happening there. But if you do want to stay in contact with me, that is the best way to do it, through Patreon, course, or through my other social media channels. But if you are interested in Patreon, again, we've got lots of good goodies on there. And I just want to say hello and shout out all those who have been there since day one. We've got Snoo Snoo all the way from Germany. We've got guys there, Eric Araujo, Bea York from Seattle, McKenna King from Ottawa, Dan from Red Door Products in Seattle, Washington, Dale Flood from Vancouver, British Columbia. We also have Reina all the way from Sweden, and Ruby from Victoria, Canada as well. I'm still like very humbled that this show reaches from one corner of the globe to the other. Thank you so much for listening. And I'm still trying to get some more people on from other parts of the world that I'm working on with time zones to talk about what's happening in sex work in those corners. So stay tuned. There's going to be some really great episodes to, end with a bang. So including our guest for today, which I feel like a lot of you might be familiar with her work, might be familiar with her name. We've got Serenity Cox joining us onto the show today, which is very exciting. If you're unfamiliar, she is a real life hot wife. She's a Canadian adult film star. We're going to be talking about her career, talking about hotwifing. What the hell is that? If you're not in the loop, then that's totally okay. We're going to define everything for you guys. But without further ado, I just want to introduce and welcome Serenity Cox onto the show today.
Thank you.
Hi, it's so lovely to have you. Gosh, thank you. We are very excited to hear from you, Serenity, and just have this really nice intimate hour with you today. We've had a lot of excitement with you coming onto the show. I just let the audience know of a really, really brief introduction of what I know about you, but I always love to throw it back to the guests that I bring onto the show so they have the space and also they can describe themselves in their own words and terms. So feel free to go right ahead. I'm going to throw it right back at you.
For my introduction? Wow.
Yeah. How would you describe yourself?
So I describe myself as a adult content creator, a hot wife in my private life as well as my online presence, and a adult industry performer. So I cover a few branches: private life, amateur content creation, as well as some professional adult industry stuff as well. Just a lot of fun.
All the things. We have so much to talk about here, and they're all kind of related to each other as well. But I think it's best to probably start right at the beginning. We would love to hear your origin story. I know I'm familiar with your origin story, but a lot of people might not be. So feel free to start wherever you feel is best for you because you've had a couple different careers now. So,
Yeah. So my origin story. So I've told this a few times, and I usually get a little bit too wordy. So I try to keep it brief because it was a long sort of process. So in the beginning, my goal was never to become an adult industry content creator, performer in any way. That was never sort of anything that really dawned on me. It all just started, my husband and I playing around, having fun in our private life. And just exploring this hot wife fantasy that we both had
mhm.
way back. So we started out like we were just an average monogamous couple, but in our private time, we always kept going back to these themes of like me with other men, and it was always something that really turned my husband on. It was something that I would lean into with like the role play and the dirty talk because I could just see in his eyes like what how much that was a turn on for him. So we would just
Mhm.
play with those kind of scenarios in our private sex life, and it was a lot of fun. And then as our relationship developed and we were more, cemented in like this really strong relationship, we started having a bit more talk about like doing this for real and,
Mhm.
actually having experiences with other people. And I had never done that in my previous relationship. So this was all new for us taking these steps together. And it was over a number of years. So it just started out in like, dirty talk and like storytelling and role playing. Then sort of we were like, let's take another step. Let's take another step. And so, then it led to, and this is way before content creation. We had never even considered that back then. Um, Maybe steps into hot wife life. And then, we would download like a dating app and we'd swipe through guys and be like, my husband would be like, which one of these like do you like? And I'd be like, oh, we'd talk about the guys and like what would happen if I was out with this guy. And then, the next step was like, why don't you just message one of these guys? Well, just message one. So like it was just these little steps and over like the years and just us together, and it would just enhance our sex life. And we'd have so much fun with this. Yeah, then eventually it got to the point where we were so comfortable with each other and comfortable with, the idea of other men that one day we were like, "I'm just gonna meet up with one of these guys," and did. And it was, 2020, and it was this big step. We'd been together for so many years already and just playing with these ideas and teasing it, and there was all this kind of buildup, and then finally, I went out and, like, got with another guy, and it went home and it was there's so many feelings involved, like, it's excitement, kind of nervous, you're like, "I know everybody's into it, but, is my husband really gonna be okay when I come home?" 'Cause, we didn't do it like a threesome originally, I did it on my own, and then
Mm.
brought the story home to him, and it was just like I've talked about this before, like, with my, like, subscribers and people, and it was just this epic retelling of what happened. My husband he wasn't upset, he was just so excited to hear it. He was just like, "Tell me everything," and we had the best conversation and then the best sex after that, and so that was sort of the step into, like, the rest of what we're doing now. The way it stepped into content creation was it was kind of not accidental. It wasn't intentional, but it was more for us at first. Video was always a big part of it, and because I would go out with guys on my own, I would often bring home video to my husband and be like, like they did, and that was part of our time together as reviewing, like sharing with him what I'd done with another guy. And then eventually we met a friend who, I'd been with several times, and then I brought him home to meet my husband, and so that was another big step.
Yeah.
And when the video started there, he's like, "Can I actually record you guys in person?" And the guy was comfortable with that, and we're like, "This is exciting." It was something new. Like, it was just like, again, this is over years and just like little baby steps. It wasn't like we jumped into, let's just start making videos of our sex and like posting it online. It was just like these little things just to kind of heighten, take another step. And it was all of just like a very exciting, we always call it a journey because it is still evolving and it's always been evolving, just taking new steps.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, and he started videoing me and this friend and then like videoing threesomes of us. And when we'd review it, we'd be like, this is really good stuff. I mean, for us, we thought it was. And then we played with the putting it online and seeing what other people would think. And you know what? Once you put it online, you start getting that feedback of other
Yeah.
people enjoying what you put out there. Oh my God. It was like, it became not addictive, like in a bad way, but it was like, it was so exciting because, I've always had kind of that exhibitionist kink, and I
Mhm.
liked knowing that other people were watching it. And back then we didn't show my face. It was all just, it was very, very amateur. But like you still got that feedback. And I was like, oh my God, we have to do more. We have to do more. It just led to more and more. It got really popular. And then now we're here. But even back then, I didn't know, my husband and I, we didn't know the terms for everything. We didn't know that what we were doing was hot wife. Like I didn't know that
Mhm.
thing. I
Yep.
didn't a lot of porn. I didn't know a lot of these dynamics. It wasn't until we started, I think FetLife was the biggest platform where we started like learning what these things were.
Yes.
It's like we know we like the idea of me with other men, and then we were like, oh, there's other people who like this too. And then we found out there's terms for this, and there's terms for like bull and stag and like hot wife and all these things that we just didn't know. We were just doing them without having found all of the definitions. So it was just super interesting, just learning and growing and figuring it out as we go along, and then somehow falling into content creation at the same time was awesome.
Wow.
Sorry, I see, this is what I mean. I go on for way too long when I start talking about it.
No, not at all. It's a podcaster's dream. It's perfect. And you're on track, so it's, like, totally fine. Wow, okay, so, yeah, I would definitely agree with you that it sounds like, for sure, like a journey, something that takes a lot of time, a lot of trust, in your partners as well. I mean, maybe if we can dial it back a little bit too, just to talk about, like, what hot wifing is, first of all. I know we kind of, like, dabbled at it a couple times here, but maybe if you can define hot wifing in your own terms, like, how would you describe it?
So hot wifing. So the hot wife is I mean, generally it's a male female relationship when you use these terms. And so the hot wife is the wife or the female in the relationship, and she enjoys sexual experiences with other people outside of her relationship. And the husband is very turned on by that as well. This is usually not like a full swap swingers relationship where the husband and the wife are both playing. It's more just the wife is playing and the husband is enjoying her experiences. A lot of
Mm,
people, it falls like it's very similar to cuckold relationships. Like
yes.
mix them up a little bit. But there are some differences. Like we don't do a lot of cuckold type stuff because that's usually where you're like denying the husband stuff or degrading. Whereas we kind of were just like, everybody's having a good time. Like my husband will jump in and, we'll have threesome style, or some days he just wants to watch. But like the main thing about Hot Wife is that the husband is really enjoying the wife exploring with other men and women, but like mostly other men. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah. And that's kind of how I feel Hot Wife goes.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with the same things, and I'm glad that you brought up the whole cuckolding thing too, because a lot of people are like, "Well, what's the difference between cuckolding?" But yes, I would say there's, like, more of, like, a submissive element to cuckolding, I would say. The denial of participation.
It's hard to put any relationship like in a box. Like you can define, be like, this is a hot wife relationship, this is a cuckold relationship, but like there's spectrums in every relationship. And so it's hard to be like, that's why sometimes these terms don't 100% fit because, there's certain themes that will be present in both types of relationships. And there's, not every hot wife relationship is the same. Not every cuckold relationship is the same, which is the fun part about figuring out what your own dynamic is. Like
Yeah.
it can be fluid and it can change from day to day too, right?
Totally, and just, like, figuring out, like, what you like and what works for you guys too, which is always, like, super fun in any relationship. When you were first kind of, like, dabbling around with this, because you said you came from, like, pretty monogamous relationship and stuff too. I know a lot of people might have questions, about, like, "Okay, like, I'm interested in this. I'm not sure if, like, my husband would be into this, my partner might not be into this." How did you both approach the conversation? How was that kind of negotiated or communicated during that time, if you can remember?
Yeah, it for us, it didn't really come out of nowhere. So, like, I do get a lot of questions from subscribers being like, "How do I bring this up to my wife?" or "How do I bring this up to my partner?" And it's always like, I always think it's best to start small. Like, have a conversation when you're having your intimate time. Like, talk about, your fantasies or talk about things that turn you on or ask your partner what turns them on. Make it like a back and forth instead of just being like, "Hey, I really want to do this." Like, start small and just be like, this idea really turns me on. Not necessarily like, I want you to go and do this right now, but like, how do you feel about this? Tell me something that maybe you've never told me that turns you on. Like, it has to be like it can't be one sided. You've got to make it into a thing about the relationship. For us, it was something we kind of figured out together. And I know early on in our relationship, it was when my husband used to ask me some questions about previous relationships,
Okay.
which
Hearing all those details.
yeah, and he would ask me some things like, "Have you ever done this before?" Or like, "Tell me about, previous people." And that I was not quite comfortable with because I'd never experienced a partner asking me about previous partners. In my history, it had always been like a jealousy thing. Like, you didn't want to
Yeah.
hear what I'd done before you. Like, basically like scratch, like blank slate, you're virgin before I met you. Like, I'd never been interested in what I got up to. And so this
Mhm.
was new when my husband would ask me these questions about like my sexual experiences. And I'd be like, why do you want to know? Like that's not your business. But then I kind of realized he'd get turned on and he really enjoyed hearing about my experiences. So it was a bit like it was funny at first for me to get used to feeling comfortable telling him. And then when I realized he wasn't judging me, he wasn't like, shaming me any way. He was just really wanted to hear about it so that he could, picture me doing something with someone else or he could, like it was just enhance kind of his this like sexual picture of his partner, right?
Totally.
That was sort of how it started. And then I would pick up on that and see how aroused he was, and then I'd push it a little further and start, like, kinda making up things because I didn't have that much of a repertoire before it. Yeah. So we ran out of real stories really fast, and then I'd kinda make things up and, just kinda seeing his reaction. So it started from that, and then it was kind of like, I see that you really like when I talk like this. Like, let's
Mhm.
talk about that. Let's lean into this a little bit." So the discussion started that way and then sorta grew
Love
into
that.
more. And yeah, it kinda happened organically. It was never really "I wanna see you with other people. Can we do that?" It just was a grab.
Mhm.
But, for people I think who are interested, like, you just have to be able to talk to your partner. You have to be able to
Absolutely.
turns you on and what turns them on, and that's what I always say. I'm like, "Don't make it a one-sided thing. Don't say, like, this is what I want." Be like, "This is what turns me on, but also what turns you on." Like, you gotta work together.
Yeah, it's a collaboration. It's like, have to work together in that too. And I like your approach too, in terms of like, starting with baby steps because you don't like, honestly, things can be pretty overwhelming if you're just like, hey, I want you to do this. And like, it can be a lot for that person. You have to kind of really empathize and put yourself in their shoes too, to see like how they would receive that.
Another thought, that's also where I find adult content comes into it, like showing your partner themes in porn or themes in adult content that turn you on and, like, seeing their reaction and being like, "What do you think of this?" Or, it can play a role in inspiring or finding out fantasies or kinks that you didn't really know you had. Viewing things together, not jumping into, like, going to a sex club and having sex with other people right away, but watching people having group sex or watching people in a threesome dynamic and being like, "How do you feel about that?" Right?
Well, that's a really good way of like incorporating them and including them into what you might find interesting, what turns you on, and just kind of like gauge, just to see like, hey, like how are you? How do you feel about this? Like, do you like this? What aspects of this do you like, and stuff like that, which I think is really really important. Going back to you, Serenity, I know that you had an entire career before your adult career as well. You worked as a nurse in ER, an
Yeah,
emergency room,
yeah.
which is pretty high intensity stuff and a complete 180 from the work you're doing now. I mean, they're both physical, yes, but talk to us about that time before this, and dabbling in between your full-time career nursing, but also kind of starting to do content creation, and where the shift kind of happened for you, and considering like, hey, maybe I might want to take this full time.
Mhm. Yeah, that was a tricky decision to make because before I left nursing, like I'd done it for like 16 years, 16 years in emergency full-time nursing, and it was a huge part of my life. Like I was a nurse. I was my career. I never saw myself as anything beyond that career-wise. So when we first started with content creation, I didn't think that it would become my full-time career. It was always a hobby that I would do in my spare time, and it played a role, and I've said this before in other interviews, that the pandemic was a huge turning point for so many people, and so many people in the adult industry, and it had a huge impact on, like, amateur content creation, themes in porn, and, like, it was a big turning point in a lot of industries, but it was when we started doing our content, and it was also when things at work were very, very stressful.
Yes.
Um, so it was like we had this outlet, and content creation served this purpose to sort of like step into this fantasy and enjoyment and focusing on our relationship and our fun and just something that was completely like just pleasure and enjoyment. And this was an outlet when everything was going crazy around us. Things at my work were wild.
Yeah.
And I'd come home and be like, like, let's go. Let's do, whatever we were doing at that time. And so it served a huge purpose that way in just mental health. And a lot of people had a hard time in their relationships during the pandemic with just so much more time together and the isolation, where we took it as an opportunity to just really develop our relationship further.
Hmm.
So for a while, balanced it really well because it fit, and we weren't doing content creation as often as I am now, I guess. So
Hmm.
it's just like this nice balance, like work my shift work, things were crazy, and then we do content on the outside. And nobody knew at that time. We were kind of keeping it quiet in the beginning because it was just like our
Yeah.
private little thing, even though we were putting it on the internet. But then when we things got out, like, as our channel, it was Pornhub. When we started putting things on Pornhub and everything just exploded, it got
Yes.
really popular, and then people in our own like, our private life found out, and that's when we had to kinda make a decision, to just be open about things.
Hmm.
This is all still leading to the the answer to your question. As more and more people started finding out, we realized this isn't something that we can just keep, just our thing, just a private thing that we're doing. And this is something that we kinda have to lean into a little more seriously. And also, we were very aware that if we kept it private and we kept it hidden, sort of feeding into the stereotype and that sort of it wasn't a good thing to do, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if you're keeping it private, that means there's something wrong with it. If people
Right.
know you do it and you're proud of it, then it makes it like they don't have any, people don't have any power against you or people like it's like I can't make the words
They
proper.
can't weaponize it against you.
Yeah. So we had a lot of big discussions and we were like, you know what, there's nothing wrong with what we're doing. What we're doing is it's helping people, we feel like. It's helping our relationship. It's, bringing exposure to different relationship dynamics. It's like empowering women, sexual women to be like, enjoying their sex life. We're like, there's so many
Mhm.
good things about what we're doing. Yes, we're naked on the internet, but like there's more positives than, embarrassment if our friends happen to see what we're doing online. So that's when we're
Oops.
like, we made a conscious decision to be like, "Yes, this is what we're doing. It doesn't change who we are. We're still the same people. We're still working our same jobs." I had some conversations at work with management, and everything was just fine. So we went on for another
Mhm.
year or 2 after it was out, balancing the 2 worlds. But then it started taking up more and more time in the content creation as, like, Vixen came along and, like, picked me up to start doing scenes with them, so there was travel involved. There were just more and more opportunities to, to just make bigger and better content, and just as these opportunities came, I found that I was saying no to a lot of them because I had this obligation to, this shift work in the hospital.
Yeah. So different.
So I was like, saying no to things that were, like, really cool and really enjoyable and fulfilling because I felt this obligation to healthcare. And even to today, like, I still hold some guilt for leaving the healthcare system because I know how bad it is and, like, how, I think back to, my team at the hospital and how they're doing now. But in the end, I had to do you sometimes have to prioritize yourself,
Yeah, totally.
people in your life that are important to you, um my s my mental health, my sleep, and if I had an opportunity to make a living and sleep at night and have a low stress job and make a living that was, also better than the living that I was making being a nurse, I finally just made that decision. I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna completely leave the profession." I
Yeah,
still feel like I will go back to it at some point when I'm done having my fun, but, right now, I think it was the best decision I ever could have made. Like, you don't know
totally.
until you leave how much, uh, a job might be affecting your your body, your health.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, like, yeah, I'm glad that you were able to, come to that realization. And of course, I feel like healthcare is always going to be there for you too if you ever decide to leave or when you decide to leave the industry. I feel like a career in healthcare is always going to be around for you. So it's kind of comforting in that way as
Nice to
well.
have that safety net to know I can do, like, this dream job, which is what I don't think of it as a job yet, but, like, I pays the bills, so it's a job, but, like, this it's basically
Totally.
just having fun because I do it with my partner, my husband, and we're just having a blast. So yeah, I don't even know where I was going with that statement, but
I mean, going back to like when things were starting to ramp up and when you launched in Pornhub and stuff and things really shifted for you and your husband, you mentioned that like friends and people close to you had found out during that time. Can you give us a little glimpse of like how you were able to handle that conversation? Because obviously this is a big risk that can happen to any of us in the industry that we need to be prepared for. And I always tell everyone that wants to get into sex work, I'm like, just be prepared. Your stuff might be found by people you don't want to be found by. You might be outed, you might be doxxed. These are big things that might happen and may affect your relationships and your life in a good or bad way, right? So I'd love to hear how are you able to handle those situations? Because oftentimes it can be quite difficult. But I'd love to hear any perspective that you can offer for the audience for that.
I'll be honest, it wasn't easy. In the end, we have great relationships with the people in our lives who matter, like our family, parents, family, friends. We have a good core group of friends who, it's all out, everybody knows and they accept it and they love us. There were a few relationships that didn't make it through finding out what we did. And that's unfortunate. But yeah, it wasn't easy. Like today, it's a couple years in the past and there were some rocky bits we had to make it through because for people in our lives, it was a big shock
Mm,
because my husband and I had always been quite private about our sex life. We didn't talk about with friends and family. We didn't talk about what we were doing behind closed door. So for my husband and I, this was a really long process over years and years, and it led to where we were at today. But for people around us who had no idea what, we were role playing in the bedroom, it was like a all of a sudden shock. Like,
mhm.
what happened to these people we thought we knew?
Aw,
It's eh, it was tricky because there was so much preparation for my husband and I, but there was no preparation for our friends and family.
mhm.
So there was just a lot of long conversations where when I explained to them how historical this actually was in my life, it made more sense to them. I don't know if there's any way we could have avoided the rocky bits. It was more like a recovery afterwards. And, if your relationships with whoever, your family or friends, if it's a strong relationship, it's gonna make it through.
Yeah,
In the end, this
it'll
didn't
survive.
change who we are as a people, even though what we post on the internet is all about our sex life. That's not what defines us as people. We have a whole, like, many
Yes.
layers to our lives outside of this. This is just one aspect that we really enjoy sharing in the space where we share it. We're not sharing it, on billboards over the highway. We're sharing this like in adult access sites, not
Mhm.
directed towards the people in our life. We're not,
Right.
flaunting it at, neighborhood parties and stuff. It's that we do. So after some careful and long discussions, we were able to kind of make our way through it and just focusing on the fact that it's not what defines us as people. It's a important part of our lives, but we're still like the people that they always knew, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's such an important part to discuss because oftentimes, like when we are put into these types of situations, that's the label comes out of like, okay, this person's doing like porn or this person's making content, and then that becomes the only thing that people see, and then they tend to forget everything else that is part of your personality, things and like with people that you've known forever, and they think like, when did things change for you?" I'm like, "Nothing has changed at all." And it's really a hard pill to swallow because they just can't seem to get past that point, and it really is devastating and oftentimes traumatic when situations like this arise. And unfortunately, it really filters out people that won't be in your life long term, which is very, very sad. And unfortunately, we do need to talk about it on the show too, because it is a reality for a lot of us in the industry. That again, this is like a big risk that might happen to you, and for you to prepare yourselves in a way. Unfortunately, we have to prepare ourselves for that if that does happen. That's really, I'm sorry to hear that. Like, some people didn't make it through during that time, which can be very, very difficult. Serenity.
I mean, we were lucky enough that the people who I mean, who really do matter in our life, knew us well enough that they were able to see past this and realize that it's just there's like, you know, they're just the lovable weirdos that we've always that we've always loved. Other aspect to their life, most people that like the core people that were really important, luckily we've been able to still maintain a good relationship with.
I'm glad to hear that. I mean, on the other side too, work can be involved with this as well. And you had to have conversation with your management at your nursing job and your career. Again, like this is something that can also come back into workplaces. And a lot of folks have lost their jobs because they have an OnlyFans account or some kind of adult subscription account or content that someone's found on the internet. So I'm sure that conversation might have been similar to friends and family, but a little bit different because that affects your money, affects your career and stuff too. So a little bit more pressure on that. Are you able to share a little bit about that conversation that you were able to have with your management and how they were able to receive it? Because it really goes one of two ways.
Yeah. So again, I was in a lot of things we were very lucky. I was lucky in my nursing job because of the way my direct manager responded to it. Because at first it was the HR person who, or not HR, the my union representative who came to me and was like, "You got to take this down. People know about it." And I was like, "Whoa, let's slow down a second. Let's slow down. Tell me why." And so we went through all the, you know, it was more of a panic response from her that it wasn't an actual, like, legal thing. So, I went through talking to a few people in my nursing union, and then, they put me in contact with the legal department of the hospital. So I had to talk to a bunch of people, came to the
Yeah.
conclusion that there was nothing legally wrong with what I was doing while maintaining a job in nursing.
Hmm.
I was not using my legal name. I was not using any healthcare related themes. I was not doing it on the property of my hospital
Yeah.
was legal and on, legal websites and stuff. It was basically just, a hobby I had with my husband that happened to be public. So like legal wise, that was fine. But I couldn't have lost my job legally, but there
Hmm.
can make your job unbearable if they
Yes.
treat you a certain way at work. So in that way, I was lucky because my manager at the time said, we had a conversation. She was like, if anybody in the workplace treats you differently because of this, come to me and they will be dealt with. And that was like the best thing she could have said. And I don't think all managers would have done that. It kind of
Yes.
even though it would probably come down to their own, ethical or their own background of how they feel about things, which is
Hmm.
unfortunate because even if what I was doing was legal, if my manager had been in some way opposed to it, morally or just whatever, she may not have been willing to stand up for me if my relationship with coworkers was impacted by it.
Right.
So I was lucky in that way because I know a lot of people, even if they don't lose their jobs because of it, their workplace can become unbearable based on, like, stigma that people put on them or the way they're treated. So, I
Yes.
didn't have any of that, and I was so thankful for it, and some of the conversations I had with colleagues who did bring it up, I was like, "You know what? This is something that I do, not anything that has to do with me at work. I'd rather not discuss it in the workplace. If you wanna have a conversation about it, let's chat outside of work, but, like, it's nothing that I'm gonna talk about in this space because it's so separate."
Yeah.
And that
For sure.
worked well.
Wow.
Had a good experience, and I left only because of my own
Of
need to do
course.
that for myself, not because of how I was treated. Everybody was it was actually really it was a sad leaving because, I was a respected, I was, like, often the charge nurse at work, and I'd been there for so long, I had a lot of respect with the colleagues, so they were just sad to see me go, which was nice. I wasn't leaving because anything was made uncomfortable.
I'm so glad to hear that because, like, as you mentioned, it really depends on, like, your manager, the type of support that you would have received, how they're able to receive that information, and their own moral compass,
Yeah.
quote, unquote, as well. Because, like, we have unfortunately heard of so many instances where folks again, there was, like, a big thing during the pandemic where a nurse in, like, New York got fired from her job because they found she had OnlyFans because she wasn't able to make enough money in nursing and just like, I've had people on the show that have lost their career in teaching because they had found out that there was like they were like another adult creator and stuff too. So it's really sad to hear of these instances that really do affect people's livelihoods, their career and everything. And also I'm just really glad that it was dealt in a professional way and that you had the support there. And for your manager to be like, "Hey, if like, if anyone says anything to you about this, like it'll be dealt with." Like that's so refreshing to hear.
That was the biggest yeah, that was yeah, there was there were so many emotions happening at that time, but her hearing her say that was, like, the biggest, like, it gave me the most confidence and strength to just be like, "Okay, can do them both at the same time." Like, I needed to hear that, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad that that worked. Very, very lucky in that sense. But going along with like how your career had been going, obviously, like having to turn down some opportunities and just like juggling the two, which can be extremely tiring on top of your full time career. Can you tell us about like playing that balancing act? Because unfortunately, not all of us can have the ability and the opportunity to go full time. There's like a number of reasons why people cannot do that for the job, their family, etc. Talk to us about the balancing act, and then, of course, when it is the right time, in your opinion, to say goodbye and then go full time.
Yeah, I don't know about giving advice to anybody else because I don't want I don't wanna be responsible, but like, I think I was lucky. I keep saying I'm lucky because I feel like my whole path has been like this, like, rainbow path, like, I didn't have qualities that a lot of people have. One thing that I was fortunate for was through this whole thing, my husband and I are doing it together, so I have a partner. We're like 50-50 partners, and it makes it a lot easier than when you're doing this on your own as, like, a single person making content or making connections and collaborations, and it was a lot less burden on one person because I had him, so and, also we had made some really good connections in our community to make our content with.
Mhm.
We had a really good system and we were working together. So I would, I'd work my shifts and then I'd have luckily the good thing about shift work is that you end up having like days off besides the weekend. So we would have like, on my days off from shift work, we'd book. Actually, I'm at a day use hotel right now because we're making content today. We were still thinking I did when I was working, but like I had my days off. One of the days we would just book a hotel during the day, call up a good friend of ours who we do content with, make some scenes, have some fun, go out for lunch, and then, back to my husband would edit while I'm back doing my shift work,
Amazing.
Like, we, like, balanced it because there's 2 of us,
Yeah.
um, and we kinda, like we got a flow going so that we'd be able to make, more and more scenes, like, on my limited little days off that I had, and as we, like, banked more content, we started, getting a bigger following on OnlyFans, which is the moneymaker. Stepped back a little bit near the end of my nursing career. I stepped back to part-time, and then I was like, "Oh, this feels good." I was like, working
Yeah.
a little bit less and having more time to, like, recover after, after work and then after making content, felt really good. So I did, like, a baby step first, and then I was like, did part-time for a bit, and then it was, Vixen offered me this, feature, uh it was like a feature production. It was called American MILF. It came out last year,
Right.
which was
Yes.
fantastic. And I had that, and I had like a AVN. There were some things like all in the same chunk of time, and I was like, "Oh my god, I can't do this. This much time off work."
Yeah.
And I was like, "I can't say no to American MILF," which turned out to be like a fabulous production. It was so cool, and so I made the decision. I was like, "I'm just going to cut ties and quit." And for me, it was okay because we were we were being quite successful in our content creation. I knew I had a career to fall back on if, everything just, crumbled, if, OnlyFans crashed and Pornhub went bankrupt and all the things may still happen. We don't know.
Knock on
But
wood.
I had to fall back on. My husband had a business to fall back on. We were in a very safe place, I guess, financially, so we were very smart about it. So,
Yeah,
I
you have to
wouldn't have
be.
quit my job unless I knew that I had a backup plan.
Yeah,
And that's what we're very safe people. We're very, uh, we're just very safe people. We don't make big, like, financial risks. We don't make big risks in life. So we waited until it was a time when we knew that quitting was gonna benefit us more
it
than
being a hindrance.
yeah. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, no, that can be a tricky decision too. And, I think people need to actually be a bit more calculative and very strategic about what they're doing with their career, because especially when it comes to money, because, so many things can happen. Your account could get shut down. These platforms can go away. Who knows? It might. But there's always, I feel like people just need to better prepare themselves for a rainy day. Yeah,
Like, 'cause,
because a
I
lot
mean,
of things can happen.
you can very quickly start making a lot of money in the adult industry, but you can
Yes,
very quickly stop making that.
lose it.
So, like, you can't get too excited when it starts coming in and just be like, "This is my lifestyle now." Like, you have to plan. And I think also we came into the industry later in life. Like, my husband and I were, like, 36 when we started doing content. Like, we had lived, we'd had our regular jobs, we had our house, and, like, our we're so regular life things that we had in order. Like, there was nothing wild or crazy or like, we're safe people. So we came into it later in life. We were smart. We knew how to handle our money, how to handle our lifestyle. So I think that helped having the life experience and the financial experience before jumping into it.
I love to hear that too. Oh my gosh, because like, there's so many times when I get pitched a lot, people. Since I'm on the last season of my podcast, I get pitched a lot by PR agencies, a lot. And they always want to pitch these new people that are fresh in the industry. They're like 18. And I'm just like, no offense to those people, but I'm just like, what are you going to be talking to me about? Like you haven't had a career yet. You've just started. But also because like not a lot of people, not a lot of them are going to survive a year or two in the industry, and they might just disappear, right? And that's just a
It's
regular
hard,
thing.
like, when this is the first industry that you've been exposed to, or the first basically job that you've had as, like, an adult person. You haven't if you haven't experienced, like, another, budgeting and finances with, like, a regular salary and that, and this is the first exposure you get, and you're fresh-faced and, like, you're gonna get a bunch of attention right away. It's not I mean, sometimes it lasts and sometimes they're really smart, like, you can make a lasting career out of it, but it doesn't always happen, and then you're stuck in a place where, like, "Where do I go now?" Because I haven't had, the life experience leading up to it. So it's hard to like just deal with that all, right out of right out of like high school, you know?
Yeah, totally. That's how I feel, and I just feel like when I, like, first started in the industry too, when I was a sugar baby, and this is, like, back when I was, like, what, 20 how old was I? 24? 24 during that time, and I felt like I was still, like, an idiot in terms of, like, "Oh my gosh, I got all this money now, and just, like, let's go shopping, let's go on a trip." I got really excited about having a lot of money really fast, which I did, save and, have some good investments and stuff now too. But like when you're that young, like you don't have anyone telling you, okay, you should be investing this. Like sometimes you might be still keeping this from your parents and your family. So there might not be a lot of people around to give you personal finance advice. So it can be a little bit scary and overwhelming, and it's a fast industry. It's a really, really fast industry, so it's refreshing Serenity to hear like, "Oh, yeah, we came into the adult industry later, and you're already coming at this with, like, a business, mindset," which, I feel like a lot of us might not have done in the beginning of our career.
In my early 20s, I would not have been able to handle this industry. Like, there's no way. I look at myself back then, like,
Yeah, it's just something I like to say, like, not just I'm 35 now, so it's just like a lot of people ask me for advice when they're coming into the industry, and I just am really straight about it because there's just a lot of risk. Would I recommend it to everyone? No, depending on your personality and depending on like who you are. It's really not made for everyone, and I think you have to be of a certain personality trait and have like certain characteristics to be successful and find longevity in this industry. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
So true.
Going back to you real quick, Serenity, talking about, you have these pillars of your career. You have, studio work and porn, professional porn, all this stuff. You have content creation, but you also have private time with your husband. How do you balance all these, and do each of those pillars look different? Because obviously the umbrella is sex, but how do you treat those differently, and if you treat them differently? And can you share a little bit about that? Because for me personally, I think that separation is key, but I'd love to hear your perspective on it as well.
Yeah. So yes, they are. I do view them all differently, but at the same time, they do still kind of feed the same core kink that my husband and I have in our relationship. So at the center of everything, it's still about my marriage, my husband, and our hot wife fantasies that have just gotten a little bit crazier than we ever thought they would. So the three sections. So there's my private life with my husband. And yes, we still off camera have hot wife experiences. It's still part of our, healthy sex life. We have a great sex life, just the two of us, even my husband. A lot of people ask that. They're like, "Do you have sex with your husband?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." So we have our private time. We have some good friends who are key parts of that are, the hot wife gentlemen that we see privately. And then there's also the amateur content, which is not much different from the private life because it is still basically us just filming what we are into. Some of our sex life we have privately, and some of it we're like, let's get the cameras out and let's, like today, for example, like we called up a buddy of ours and we're just hanging out for the day and have a little sex. The guys just went out for lunch right now and more sex. And we're going to film it. And we keep it very much like this is still just us having fun sex and it's filmed. And we will put this stuff on our OnlyFans and Pornhub. And this is what our amateur content is. It's not overly staged or it's just, we try to keep it as part of our healthy sex life. It just has cameras on. And we have a lot
Mhm.
so this is what our amateur content is. It's just we it's not necessarily with other content creators. It's also just with our regular friends that, will cut their faces out and we just show a little view of that. And it's just this is what our sex looks like. And then the other branch, which is the professional, I never thought that I would be involved in because it was never something that, occurred to me until they actually reached out after seeing our amateur stuff.
Mhm.
And I wasn't so sure about this in the beginning because this doesn't involve my husband, and at the core, our content is about my relationship. But it turns out that my husband really also enjoys when I go out to like LA to do some shooting and I'll have like this wild scene. And this is not my sex life. This is a production.
I
And it's
swear.
fun and it feels good, but I go into it with a totally different mindset that I'm creating I always say, so I'm creating art. I'm creating a scene to evoke emotions off of people who are viewing it. And the stuff I do, like here in this hotel room, this is for me to feel good, and we film it and share it. And this is about my sex and my, close friends and husband. The
Mhm.
stuff I do out there is about the people who are watching, and I do it to perform, and I also do it to perform for my husband because he's not there. Um,
Yeah.
and then we work that into our kink by I come home and I tell him the stories. And also, Vixen are always open to things that I want to do. And so, for example, I think it'll be out by the time this comes out, but I'm doing a gangbang with Vixen. And I've never done a gang
Fun.
and it's something that was a little bit complicated in our private life to do it in like a safe way, in a way that I wanted to. This is like
Mhm.
a very, production stuff is so safe. And so, like, it's just a good way for me to live out this fantasy that my husband and I wanted for me that we haven't been able to work out in our private life. So we have this experience through Vixen. And so we filmed that. It'll come, I think it's coming out in August. God, I hope it's because I don't want to tell it on here before it comes out. Yeah, so it's something that I was able to do and just bring that home and tell my husband about it, and then he'll get to watch it when it comes out, and that kind of feeds into our kind of sexy time together, even though
Totally.
really it's a production I'm doing to look good on camera. So it is very different, but at the same time still feeds that core kink. And
Mhm.
I don't do anything that's, like in my stuff, I don't do any custom content. I don't do any everything I do is selfish. It's just what I wanna do and what feeds my feeling good and my husband's feeling good. Everything we do is kinda still about us, even if it's
Mhm.
production stuff. I do scenarios that, interest me. It's not about what somebody wants to see me doing. It's what I wanna see me doing.
That's so important to have though too, because I feel like sometimes when people can tend to get pretty swept away in this industry, and like with the dangle of like more money to do this, or more collaborations, more this, more fans, more whatever it is. I think it's really shows a lot about your integrity in terms of like, okay, I really want to stay true to myself. I want to still keep having fun and have this specific kink in as your core. And I think that's like why a lot of fans keep getting drawn back to you and getting drawn back to your content, because it's just like it's so specific. And obviously it's really hot, but like and it shows that it's something that you really, really enjoy doing. And sometimes people can get swayed easily, and not to bring age into this again, but yeah, sometimes like when you are like starting out in this career, it can be really, really overwhelming, and you, you feel like you can't say no sometimes. And I'm sure you've been in situations where you're like, I'm not really into that, and maybe not. And being assertive about that is it can be really hard in the beginning of your career, but it sounds like you're definitely really in charge, which is really exciting to hear.
And I think that's important too, and that's one of the other reasons why I probably wouldn't have done well in this industry when I was younger, because I was very, like, meek and, like, afraid to kinda speak my mind when I was younger, and the me who I saw in my early 20s is not the me now. Like, now I'm like, "Whatever," like, I'm not afraid to say no. I'm not gonna do something that, I'm not comfortable with, and if my career goes down the drain because of that, I'll go back to nursing. Or it's not fun anymore. Well, right now, like, I'm fortunate enough that I've not been able to be successful while still keeping it about what I'm enjoying.
That's so important and so great. I mean, like, wow, I feel like I've learned so much about you during this like hour of chatting with you, Serenity. It's been so much fun, and thank you for sharing with the audience today. Just like a little bit more intimacy and like intimacy about like how your life and how your career has flourished. I think it's been really, really great to hear. Do you have any upcoming projects or anything, or exciting things that you might want to do in your career?
Yeah,
So many.
so for my amateur stuff, like, we're just gonna keep on doing what we're doing because 'cause we're having a blast, but for the professional stuff with Vixen, right now, we're just in talks. I just finished a year contract with them, so we're just in talks about arranging a second year contract and seeing what that looks
Yeah.
like and what kind of new fun scenarios I can get myself into, with no spoilers, I guess. I did mention there's gonna be a big production coming out where I do my first gangbang, and that'll be coming out in
Yay.
August. So I think it will have already been out by the time this comes out, hopefully, so the Vixen doesn't
Perfect.
kill me for spoiling stuff at the time. But yeah, otherwise just doing what I'm doing, having fun, and, taking opportunities as they come my way.
Exciting. Well, we're so looking forward to hearing and seeing more from you. Before I let you go, where can we all find you?
You can find me, on OnlyFans, just Serenity Cox. You can find me on Instagram, serenitycox.official, and you can find me on Twitter at serenitycoxto.
All the places, all of the links are in the show notes below. So if you are listening, obviously, if you haven't clicked already, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and give Serenity a follow. I'm sure she'd love to hear from you as well. And of course, if you want to get in touch with myself, you can. It is a Strip by Sia podcast on Instagram, Strip by Sia on Blue Sky, X. Where else am I at? We have patreon.com/strip by Sia. Lots of places you yourself want to come onto the show. I think there's like a bit of a panic. You guys are like, oh my gosh, last season. I've been getting lots of requests for people to want to be on the show. You can still write in again within this time frame that I'm telling you by the end of the year. So this is probably going to be like, what is it? September, October, November, December. 4 months times four, maybe 16 ish more episodes after this. We shall see what happens, but if you do want to come on the show, it's strippedbysia.com. And I do have a contact form there. You can kind of pitch yourself to be on the show. Um, I'm excited to produce a few more episodes for you all to enjoy. And if you like the show, of course, still do your thing, rate, review 5 stars, do your thing on Spotify and Apple, as well as on YouTube. The show will live on, so I'll keep it on there for you guys for as long as we need. If you want to get in touch with myself, as I mentioned, all those platforms are really great ways to keep in touch. And it will be another new episode next week of Launching at Midnight. And I just want to thank you, Serenity, for your time today. Thanks for joining us. I know we had lots of people being super excited for this episode to come out, and best of luck filming this afternoon. Thank you again.